For months, she parked in his driveway as if she owned it, until he finally called the tow truck. Twice. What happened next became a downfall so public, the entire neighborhood watched. Reggie Carter was a patient man, he had to be. He spent his days wrangling a classroom full of middle schoolers in Lakeland, Florida, trying to make science sound more exciting than their phones. He had a system, a rhythm to his life, and he liked it that way. His home was his sanctuary, a modest, single-story brick house with a neatly trimmed lawn, a driveway just big enough for his car and the occasional guest. It wasn't much, but it was his. A place where he could unwind, grade papers, and watch the game in peace. Until Blythe Vanderholt decided that his driveway was hers. It began innocently enough. The first time Reggie spotted her silver Lexus parked there, he figured it was a mix-up, maybe she had guests, maybe she was rearranging cars. No big deal. He let it slide. But then it happened again. And again. At first, Blythe always had an excuse. "Oh, I was just running inside for a second," she'd say, flashing a tight-lipped smile and waving dismissively with her manicured hand, as if that settled it. Reggie didn't like it, but he wasn't one to make trouble. Not yet. Then one evening, after a long, exhausting day at school, he came home ready to collapse, only to find that same Lexus, parked dead center in his driveway again. No one in sight. He took a deep breath, exhaled slowly, and knocked on Blythe's door. She opened it with an expression that said she already knew why he was there. "Reggie, what's wrong?" she asked, pretending surprise, her tone dripping with condescension. "Your car's in my spot." "Again," he said evenly. Blythe blinked innocently. "Oh, that? I had a delivery. The driver needed space to back out. You don't mind, do you?" "I do, actually," Reggie replied, keeping his voice calm. "I need you to stop parking in my driveway." Blythe sighed dramatically. "Well, I live right next door, Reggie. It's not like I'm parking on a stranger's property." "You're parking on mine," he said firmly. She rolled her eyes. "Are you really that bothered by a car sitting there for a few minutes?" "It's not a few minutes. It keeps happening," Reggie said, folding his arms. "And it needs to stop." She gave a quick, sharp laugh. Fine. No need to get worked up, I'll move it." And she did. That time. But the problem didn't end. Over the next few weeks, it became routine. Reggie would come home to find her car right where it shouldn't be. Notes went missing. Door knocks went unanswered. Then one evening, he pulled up to see not just her Lexus, but a sleek black BMW parked beside it. Neither of them his. That was it. Reggie parked on the street, snapped a photo, and marched to her door. This time, he knocked harder. She opened it slowly, face blank with mild irritation. "Reggie," she drawled, dragging out his name like he was the problem. "Whose car is that?" he asked, pointing to his driveway. "Oh, that's my friend's," she said lightly. "We were having a little get-together. You weren't home, so I figured it wouldn't matter." "It does matter," Reggie said, his patience wearing thin. "A parking lot, Blythe? This is my home." Blythe folded her arms, tilting her head like he was the unreasonable one. "Well, you should have said something earlier. I would have moved it." Reggie clenched his jaw and inhaled through his nose. "I'm saying something right now. Move the car." She rolled her eyes, muttered something under her breath, and finally stepped inside to call her friend. Reggie waited. 10 minutes. 15. 20. Enough. He walked back to his house, sat on the couch, and started searching for the local towing company's number. This, he thought, was just the beginning. Reggie wasn't the kind of man who liked drama. He lived quietly, minded his own business, and gave people the benefit of the doubt. But Blythe Vanderholt had officially crossed the line. The next morning, before leaving for work, he decided to call the HOA. He didn't expect much. Homeowners associations were notorious for siding with whoever had the most influence, and Blythe? She was practically royalty on the board. "Sir, unless there's physical damage to your property, we really don't get involved in neighbor disputes," the bored woman on the phone said. Reggie sighed. "That's all I've been doing, talking to her." "Well," she replied, "we can send a courtesy email, but that's about it." A courtesy email. Yeah, that'd teach her. Reggie hung up, shaking his head. If the HOA wouldn't do anything, he'd handle it himself. That morning, he left one final note on Blythe's windshield, bold letters, impossible to miss, "Do not park here again." But when he got home that evening, the note was gone. And her Lexus was right there again, this time parked at an angle, like she didn't even care. He parked on the street and stared, disbelief turning into pure irritation. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Fuming, he marched up to her door and knocked. Hard. It took a full minute before she opened it, wine glass in hand, face calm and smug. Reggie, she said, dragging out his name. What now? I need you to move your car, he said, his voice tight. She took a slow sip of wine. Oh yeah, about that. I meant to text you, but I figured you wouldn't mind since you always park on the street anyway. Reggie's fingers flexed at his sides. I do mind. This is my property, Blythe. She let out a sharp laugh, shaking her head. Seriously? You're getting bent out of shape over a driveway? He stepped closer. No, I'm getting bent out of shape because I've told you over and over to stop doing this, and you keep ignoring me. Blythe rolled her eyes, swirling her wine. Fine. I'll move it. Reggie exhaled, forcing himself to let it go, and turned to walk back home. Then, under her breath, she muttered something. Not loud enough to make out every word, but loud enough to hear the tone. He turned back. What did you just say? She gave an innocent smile. Nothing. No, you said something. Blythe smirked. I just don't get why some people are so uptight about the smallest things. There it was, that smug, passive-aggressive arrogance that made his blood boil. Reggie said nothing. He just walked back to his house, sat down, and saved the number for the towing company. That night, as he graded papers, his mind replayed the entire exchange, the tone, the attitude, the sheer entitlement. She wasn't going to stop. And Reggie was done playing nice. The next time Blythe parked in his driveway, Reggie didn't knock. He didn't leave a note. He just picked up the phone and called the tow truck. It was a Friday evening. He'd just returned home from a long week at school, exhausted. But the sight of her silver Lexus sitting proudly in his driveway? That gave him a second wind. No hesitation this time. He parked down the street, dialed the number, and spoke calmly. I need this car gone. The tow truck arrived in under 20 minutes. It was almost poetic how smoothly it went. The driver hopped out, took one look, and nodded. She's parked in your driveway? Yep, Reggie said. Got proof of ownership? Reggie pulled out his property deed. He'd come prepared. All right then, the driver said with a grin. Let's hook her up. Within minutes Blythe's luxury SUV was lifted off the ground, wheels locked in place. Reggie folded his arms and watched with a quiet satisfaction as the truck eased out of the driveway and her car vanished down the street. He had no idea what to expect next, yelling, threats, a frantic phone call? He didn't have long to wait. About an hour later, his front door shook with furious bangs. Bam! 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 Reggie didn't rush. He stood, stretched, and made her wait a beat longer. Then he opened the door. Blythe stood there in silk pajama pants and flip-flops, phone clutched in her hand, blonde bob slightly askew, fury written across her face. Where's my car? She snapped. You mean the one illegally parked in my driveway? Reggie asked, calm as ever. Don't play games with me, Reggie. Where is my car? She hissed. Reggie shrugged like it was nothing. It's gone. I had it removed. Blythe's laugh teetered on hysteria. You are going to pay for this. Do you know who I am? I'm on the HOA board, I have connections. Reggie blinked slowly. Great. It's at Sunshine Towing on Orange Blossom Trail. Have a good night. He shut the door. But she wasn't finished. Blythe stood on his lawn for 10 minutes, ranting and flipping between indignation and thinly veiled threats. She called the police, and when officers arrived, they were blunt. You had it towed from your own property? One officer asked Reggie. Yep. He handed over his deed. The officer glanced, then at Blythe. He's within his rights. If you want it back, you'll need to pay the impound fee. The color drained from Blythe's face. Reggie almost wanted to freeze that expression and frame it, but he knew this wasn't over. If anything, she doubled down. At first it was small, passive-aggressive notes left on his doorstep in bright red marker. This is a community, be considerate. Reggie tossed them in the trash. Then came HOA complaints. His porch plants violated aesthetic guidelines, his trash cans were allegedly left out too long, his mailbox paint was suddenly an offense. By the fourth letter he wasn't angry so much as mildly impressed by the effort. Then she started calling security. One evening, while Reggie watered the lawn, a white security SUV screeched up with lights flashing. A serious-looking guard stepped out. You live here, sir? He asked. Yeah, Reggie said. Why? We received a call about suspicious activity. The word suspicious, again. He looked up and saw Blythe on her porch, arms folded, pretending to be concerned. Reggie gave the officer a dry look. So watering my lawn is suspicious now? The officer looked uncomfortable. Sir, look, Reggie cut in. I know who called. Tell her to find a new hobby. The guard sighed and went back to his vehicle. Blythe, however, smiled like she'd won. Reggie didn't rise to it. He marched to her porch instead. Everything okay? She asked, feigning innocence. You know exactly why security was here, he said, folding his arms. You're trying to bait me. Blythe gasped. No need to be rude. I was just concerned, we all have a duty to watch out for the neighborhood. She wanted a reaction, something she could use. He gave her the opposite, a small, controlled smirk. I'm done playing games, Blythe, he said, low and steady. I gave you more chances than you deserved. You keep pushing, so I'll push back. She should have been worried. She wasn't. 1 week later, on a Saturday afternoon after the gym, Reggie pulled onto his street whistling and saw Blythe's Lexus parked dead center in his driveway, this time blocking his garage and bold enough to ruin his whole weekend. His family was due for a cookout any minute. He sat in his car for a second, then stepped out, made one call, and settled on his porch with folding chairs. Hey, this is Reggie Carter. I need a car towed, same spot as before. The dispatcher chuckled. Let me guess, same car? You got it. Be there in 15. 15 minutes later the tow truck rolled up, fast, efficient. The driver stepped out and grinned. We doing this again? Looks like it, Reggie said. He watched as the driver hooked the Lexus. Blythe stormed out, screeching like someone stealing her house. Stop! What are you doing? You can't tow my car. Reggie sat back in his chair, sip of water in hand, unhurried. The tow driver didn't even look up, he was already strapping the wheels down. You called the tow truck again? Blythe shouted, fists clenched. You parked in my driveway again, Reggie replied. I have guests over. There was no street parking. She barked. Not my problem, he said. You're being petty, she growled. I told you I would have moved it. Right, and yet here we are, Reggie said. Her face flushed to a deep red. You don't understand what you're doing. I have connections. I can make. The threat hung in the humid afternoon air. Blythe spat the words like they were a weapon. But this time, Reggie wasn't bluffing. He had learned how far she would go, and he'd chosen his next move carefully. Reggie couldn't help but laugh, actually laugh. Oh, Blythe, he said, shaking his head. You really don't understand what's happening here. He nodded toward the tow truck. Your car? It's already gone. Blythe spun around, and there it was, her Lexus halfway down the street. She let out a sharp, piercing shriek. You're going to regret this, she snapped. Reggie stood up slowly, brushing off his jeans. No, Blythe, he said calmly. You are. As he walked back inside, his family arrived, laughter, hugs, catching up. But Blythe stood on her porch, seething, alone. And Reggie knew one thing, she wasn't done yet. The second tow should have ended it. But Blythe wasn't the kind of woman who took a loss quietly. She wanted revenge, and this time, she wanted an audience. By Monday morning, Reggie had become the villain. At least, that's what Blythe wanted everyone to believe. The HOA board, her little circle of friends, sent out a community-wide email about neighborly disputes that had escalated unnecessarily. It was vague, polished, and perfectly passive-aggressive. Just enough to make Reggie look like the bad guy. Then came the flyers. Yes, flyers. Printed. Laminated. Taped to every mailbox on the street. Is this the kind of community we want? Do we tow our neighbors instead of talking to them? Reggie just laughed. He tore the one off his own mailbox. All this, he muttered, over a driveway. But here's the best part, nobody was buying it. Neighbors started texting him, hey man, saw the flyer. What's wrong with her? She fined me $200 last year for a wind chime. If she parks in your driveway again, I'll split the tow fee with you. Reggie didn't even have to defend himself anymore. Everyone already knew who the real problem was. Then came the HOA meeting. Normally, Reggie wouldn't bother showing up, but this time, he wanted a front row seat. He walked in, sat down across from Blythe. She refused to look at him. The meeting started with the usual dull updates, budgets, landscaping, trash bins, until one of the board members cleared his throat. We need to address a complaint filed regarding misuse of private property. Blythe straightened up, ready to play the victim. But then came the twist. The complaint, the man said, is against Blythe Vanderholt. Reggie couldn't hide his grin. What? Blythe blurted. Blythe, one woman sighed, we've received multiple reports of you harassing residents and using HOA resources for personal issues. That's ridiculous, she snapped. I'm the one being harassed. But the board member kept reading, false security calls. Unauthorized communications. Retaliation against residents. Blythe's face went pale. You're taking his side? She demanded. No, the woman said quietly. We're taking the side of the community. Blythe looked around, searching for support, but found none. For the first time, she wasn't in control. But she still didn't stop. 2 days later, Reggie pulled into his driveway, and noticed something strange. His trash cans were gone. Not tipped over. Not misplaced. Gone. Then he saw them, stacked neatly behind Blythe's house. Reggie burst out laughing. This woman's lost her mind. Emails, flyers, fake complaints, and now she'd resorted to stealing trash cans. He took a few photos, walked to her door, and knocked. No answer. Knocked again. Finally, the door creaked open. Blythe looked different, no smug smile, just exhaustion. Reggie held up his phone. You want to tell me why my trash cans are in your backyard? I don't know what you're talking about, she said flatly. Reggie chuckled. Blythe, I have pictures. Let's not do this. She stayed silent. You've lost, he said simply. You can't find me. You can't call security. The HOA isn't backing you. And now, you're stealing trash cans like a crazy person. Her eyes flashed, but she said nothing. Reggie stepped closer, calm and steady. You've spent months trying to make my life miserable, he said softly, but look at you, seems like you're the one who's miserable now. She swallowed hard, then quietly shut the door. Reggie smiled. That, he thought, was the smartest thing she's done all year. The next morning, Reggie filed an official complaint against her. And this time, the HOA listened. Harassment reports. False calls. Unauthorized messages. Theft. It all stacked up. By the end of the week, Blythe Vanderholt was removed from the HOA board. Her power, gone. Her control, over. And the best part? She never parked in Reggie's driveway again. From that day forward, Blythe stayed silent. No more glares. No snide remarks. No petty complaints about plants or trash cans. She avoided him completely, and Reggie couldn't have been happier. For the first time in months, he had peace. No cars blocking his driveway. No passive-aggressive emails. Just calm. But the neighborhood wasn't done talking. Her downfall had become legend. The HOA queen got dethroned. She fined me $75 once for leaving my bike out. She called security on my nephew because of a hoodie. Reggie realized she'd been a nightmare long before she came after him. He'd just been the first one to stand up. And when he did, the entire community followed. A few months later, a "for sale" sign appeared in her yard. Some said she was embarrassed. Others said she just couldn't live with all the enemies she'd made. Reggie didn't care why. When the moving truck finally pulled away, he stepped onto his porch, took a deep breath, and smiled. The fight was over. And he'd won. The lesson? Some people think they can bully others forever, that their rules don't apply to them. But sooner or later, they push the wrong person. And when that person finally stands up, the whole world watches them fall.